Quick reminder before the video begins, I do not own this creepypasta, so I'll leave a link to the original creepypasta in the description below. It was around midday when the call came. My manager at Target was asking whether I could work that night. The store had been understaffed recently since many of my coworkers had left town. I didn't think much of it at the time. I didn't really have time to make friends in the retail business anyway. I do remember one guy, though. What was his name again? I think it was Andrew. Yeah, that's it. I remember that I used to wear a striped red tie to work every day, even when it wasn't part of the dress code. Murky clouds had already filtered out the sun as I left home for work. I wasn't even halfway to work before the first droplets of rain had begun to fall. I parked my car on one street from the shopping center and ran to the side of the entrance to escape the rain. Entering the store, I was bathed in the artificial white lights of the hundreds of fluorescent bulbs above. The light was welcome, but the air around it had a stale, oppressive feeling to it. I know it sounds strange, but when you've worked in a department store for long enough, the environment feels extremely unnatural. It's as if you've been isolated from the outside. The warm, filtered air doesn't quite fill up with your lungs, and the plain, white interior forces an abnormal feeling of cleanliness around the room. The first thing I noticed as I walked into the store was it was completely devoid of sound. There's no music playing in the background, no sounds of people walking around and talking. The room was still, almost as if frozen in time. The store should have been still open for about another hour, yet there was no one here. I decided to go to the employee reception and find my manager. I opened the fire exit door and stiffened as it loudly snapped shut behind me. The metallic clicking sound echoed in silence. I climbed up the stairs to the reception landing and looked around. No one here. At this point, I wasn't necessarily scared, more uncomfortable and confused. Suddenly, a hand firmly grasped my shoulder, and I leapt forward in surprise. Turning while backing off, I saw my manager looking at me with a questioning face, hands still suspended in midair. I breathed a deep sigh of relief as I began to explain my duties for the night. As I walked back out onto the main floor, I noticed that the store was still alive. Popular hit songs played in the background as people walked around and talking among themselves. I was genuinely shocked. Was I just imagining things before? I shrugged it off. Why would I care? Things are normal now. So I was carrying out my assignments, tidying shelves, helping customers, when the announcement for the closing of the store beamed out in the public announcement system. As usual, the customers made their way out in the front of the store and left one by one, until there was only the workers remaining. Following my suit, my fellow employees also left the store. Following suit, back to their homes. Unfortunately, my job was not yet done, and I was still on the clock until dawn. In spite of this, I moved to the bedding section of the homewares department with the hunchback, letting out a long and silent yawn. What I saw when I arrived astonished me. A whole aisle of quilts and blankets had been trashed. The packages were pulled from the shelves, items removed from the packaging and strewn havishly along the aisle. I groaned inwardly. Some pain-in-the-ass customers had decided to examine all the quilts firsthand and left their mess for me to clean up. I began to bend up and pick up a few quilts. When the light at the end of the aisle began to flicker rapidly, it was hypnotizing. It made the room in front of me appear as it was an old movie reel. Without warning, a black deformed figure quickly lurched across the end of the aisle, beneath the flickering light. From about 15 meters, I'm not sure what I saw was a fabrication of the dancing light or something supernatural. I've never believed in that kind of thing. It has to have been a joke, probably choreographed by the manager. I blinked a few times and rubbed my sleepiness from my eyes, dragging my hands down my face, pulling my cheeks. I reopened them. As my vision focused, I saw that the clutter before me had ceased to exist. All of the stock was neatly packed on the shelves. Blankets were folded precisely and stacked symmetrically. At the far end of the aisle, there was no longer flickering, its bright light reflecting on the now clean white towel floor. Everything was back the way it should have been, and yet it seemed all wrong. Once again, it seemed as something... Sorry. It seemed as something impossible had happened right before my eyes with no logical explanation. I was definitely worried now. I reached my pocket for the company phone to call the manager. I dialed the 3 digits and held the phone to my ear. I was expecting it to be out of service or battery, but as cliche as these kind of sounds, but to my relief, the ringing sound played, but I could hear 2 ringing sounds, one through the phone and one from the halfway up the store from the direction of the toys department. I recognized the second ringing as a specialized ringtone for the manager. I always hated the toy department. The shelves were far above eye height, reaching at least 2 shelves above my head. It was hard to find things in this area because it was like an overgrown hedge maze covered with children's toys. I began to move quickly towards the sound of the ringing, hoping to catch my manager busy at work. I walked along the far end of the rows of aisles, head tilted, looking along each until I found the source of the ringing. I stopped towards the center when I saw it, a large pool of red further down the passageway of shelves. Off to the side was a phone, slowly moving around as it vibrated. It was coated with the red substance. Subconsciously, I started taking baby steps towards the large splatter of red, torso leaning away, ready to run at the sight of trouble. As I got closer, I noticed that the red liquid continued along down the aisle and around the other corner as if it had been dragged from the initial pool. At this point, I knew I couldn't have been a joke anymore, and my natural instinct to stay out of dangerous situations kicked in. I turned back to leave, but now a towering shelf was blocking the exit that I just came through. I hadn't noticed it until now, but the shelves that lined the aisle now reached the ceiling, making it impossible to climb over. This is impossible. What's going on? I looked back to the gory scene in the aisle to find that it was no longer there. It was as if there was never any spill in the first place, and the manager's phone was nowhere to be seen. I told myself that at the first sign of trouble, I was going to run straight for the fire exit and leave. I started briskly to walk out of the toy department and down the main walkway towards the front store. That was when the lights started to flicker. Every light in the entire store began to flicker on and off. Not like the last time where it flickered quickly. This time it flickered slowly and randomly. But when I saw between the lights and being on off scared me more than I had been in my entire life. The distorted black figures were surrounding me. There had to be now at least 20, shuffling and hobbling in random directions around me. I was able to see what they looked like up close, long dangling jaws with misshapen and crooked teeth. Their arms hung out in front of them, knuckles dragging along the ground as they limped around on stick-like legs. I could only see them when the lights were off. It was strange. One second they were engulfing me, the next it would seem as they were not even there at all. That was when the lights began to shut off, one by one, row by row. Starting from the front of the store, the lights began to go out, as if someone had knocked over a long line of dominoes. I started running towards the back of the store where the light shone brightly, illuminating ever-increasing darkness. I was in an adrenaline-fueled panic as I ran to the back of the corner store, with my back against the wall, as I watched as the last row of lights went out, and the last light directly above me was remaining. It was as if I was on a stage, a single spotlight shining down upon me. I looked out at the audience of disgusting and hideous monstrosities as they surrounded me. I took a slow, deep breath of recognition as I saw the closest one, wearing an old and torn, yet visible, striped red tie.